Did you want to relive the stupidity of Star Wars Acolyte Episode 3, except make it even stupider this time? Well, you're in luck, because Episode 7 is yet another flashback episode, and half of it is reliving all the scenes from the first one. And just as I thought, the Jedi are now the bad guys, and Soul is the absolute stupidest character I may have ever seen on television. Turns out the Jedi really didn't know the witches were there, and they were using metal detectors to find something, some sort of force power from a Star Wars Legends book I didn't read, I'm sure. And this power created the twins, who are really one consciousness split into two. And now we see what really killed the witches. You see, the mother turned into a black oozing smoke, and then Soul decided he was going to stab her for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And that's when the fighting starts. And now the witches sequester themselves in a single room, and instead of fighting them directly, they use the power of swaying to take over the Wookiee Jedi and have him fight them instead. So at least there's actually a use for this Wookiee Jedi. And basically the whole fight started because this Jedi was a whiny baby who wants to go home. Wah. It turns out May regretted setting the fire. Oh no. And then Soul has the choice when he's holding the platforms both up by the Force, when May and her sister Asha are both hanging there. He decides to let May go, and because he feels such a big connection with her that he confused her with May in the earlier scene. And instead of, you know, calling out to them and telling them to move off the platform, he decides to let May fall into a pit. Makes total sense. And it turns out all the witches died because Trinity from the Matrix closed her eyes and thought about the Wookiee really hard, and they all just slumped over. An even stupider death than them burning to death. And then they decide they're going to lie to everyone because why not, I guess. And the witches predict Order 66 because they have to tie it into the prequels somehow. Even though the witch says that all the Jedi are going to get wiped out, and we already know that that isn't the case from Ahsoka and all these other characters who survived Order 66, but I guess that's nitpicking. But the biggest problem with this show is how they keep you watching with the answer to all these questions. How did the witches die? How are the sisters created? All of these things that end up being hollow at the end, so it feels very pointless. By the time you're done with this show, you realize how empty and uneventful it really is. 1 2-hour script stretched out over 8 episodes. I was laughing hysterically through the last half of this episode, so I guess by default, it is the most entertaining episode of the bunch. And now there's only one episode to wrap all of this story up. It turns out Soul was telling this story to May, who already knew everything that happened, so what is the purpose of this episode? But by this point in the story, I'm actively rooting for Order 66 to happen, so yeah, I can't wait for this to be over.